perception, um, it has to do with an encounter with the unconscious. So we all have an unconscious. We dream every night. But suppose you had a dream and you didn't wake up and you couldn't find the separation between that world, the world of the collective unconscious or even the personal unconscious, and this waking world. Um, Another image that I describe in the book that I think is important for understanding this perspective is that a person who is having what we call schizophrenia is basically experiencing their unconscious absolutely flooding their ego. So the ego is that driver in the car. It's what we need to take us through the day and navigate life.
Yeah. In the book, you refer to it, I think, as having an organizing function.
Yes, big time. Well, think about it. In order we have to have a sense of our ego identity in order to navigate our lives in this world, okay? Edinger has a wonderful illustration. I put this in the book, and it's in Ego and Archetype. It's on page 5, I think, and he uses it in a different way, but to me, it really spoke to what I perceive happening when a person is in this condition, having this kind of an encounter with the unconscious. Now, there are 3 little diagrams. One of them shows like little snowmen, like 2 balls on top of each other. The first diagram shows the top ball and the bottom ball completely separate from each other. So this would be your ego. The top would be your ego, and the bottom would be the unconscious or the self, right? So complete separation like that, it's not an optimal arrangement. It lacks integration. It doesn't meet the challenge of the totality of our existence. It avoids it, usually not voluntarily. The second diagram shows an overlap so that the ego is able to gradually integrate contents from the unconscious. We need to be able to tap into that resource. But holding on to that organizing function is how we can make sense of it. Okay, the third diagram shows a real immersion of the top ball by the second one. In other words, the ego is submerged in the unconscious. That's what I image as a state of what we call schizophrenia. It's an ego that is flooded by the contents of the unconscious. Okay, so that's an important, I'm hoping that will go out into the world. I'm not the one who brought it there, but this is how I'm talking about it. Yeah.
It lands for me. I also read your book, but it seems coherent enough if I position myself to someone who hasn't read anything that you've produced yet.
Yeah.
And when you say flood, you use this metaphor quite often in the book, this sort of like the unconscious as a sort of ocean or waters. And I don't know if I'm just literally taking exactly what you said in the book or if it's some like the image that's prevailing from my interpretations of some of the things talked about. But I was left with this sense of like, okay, so the ego is just doing its best to like keep a nice dry plot and like access the waters as necessary. And that schizophrenia or schizophrenic episodes, they're the consequence of that nice dry plot and whatever sort of retaining walls were set up to ensure that we only have the amount of water that's necessary for creativity and function and so on and so forth. They like break down and then it is flooded to the point in which that normal organizing function, the operational space of that dry land is almost completely engulfed. And there's this weird, like it's not maybe necessarily actually desperate, but this strange attempt to kind of confine this beyond individual content into an individual frame, and the mind just cannot handle it. The dry land just becomes washed away, and what was once that person is just gone.